Welcome back to another Chatting with Wisdom. I am Geegado Megwan, spirit name, which means talking feather woman. Apparently, I'm stumbling on my words. Also known as Rollie Allaire, I empower women to stand on their truth so that they feel fulfilled and can achieve all their desires. This unscripted weekly interview series is to help support successful women who feel misunderstood and disempowered in personal relationships stand in their truth so that they can communicate with confidence. Join me for a Stand in Your Truth call where you'll explore what's blocking you from communicating with confidence in your personal relationship. This week, I'd like to introduce Paige Frisone, and we will be chatting about the missing link in healing protocols, the subconscious mind. So, Paige is a subconscious health practitioner, published writer, poet, and psychosomatic speaker stationed in Boulder. Is it Connecticut?
Colorado.
Colorado. I should have looked ahead of time so I knew that what the abbreviation for CO stood for. She's the founder and owner of her integrative practice, Realm Wellness, where she aids clients around the world in healing trapped traumas on a subconscious and sustainable level. Her work is fueled by losing a decade of her life to anorexia, severe depression, anxiety, self harm, and ineffective prescription meds. So, welcome. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing so well. I'm so excited to connect today. I love your mission statement as far as like who you support, who you help, and I share that same mission. So I'm really excited to converse with you today.
Awesome. And we were actually scheduled to meet up on International Women's Day originally, and then life just kind of took over for me, and prevented me from being able to be available because we had a new grandbaby. So he was born on the 9th, mind you, but it was like all around that same time frame. So like messaging Paige from the hospital, hey, I'm at the hospital. And can we reschedule? And then I ended up getting sick, and so here we are. But I always believe in divine timing. So I believe that whatever it is that needs to happen when it needs to happen. So there's a reason why today is the day in terms of this message. So if you're catching this today or on the replay, there's a reason why you are catching this message on this moment at this time. So I am very strong in that. And I really truly believe that all divine timing happens as it's supposed to, even though our ego brain goes like, oh my gosh, we were supposed to do this on this date, or whatever it is that was supposed to happen. And I know, Paige, you were super excited about being on International Women's Day.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat with you. I think divine timing is everything, and it almost brings more intention to whatever we thought we were going to be doing. Like I really was intentional about booking it on March 8th, but then, the universe has other plans, and I'm totally trusting of that 100%. And so in a way, it forces us to be more intentional beyond that which we thought we were doing, if that makes sense. And so it's funny we're talking about the subconscious today, because consciously I chose March 8th, but subconsciously the universe is like, nah, this is the day. So that always has more weight over what we think the ego needs, as you said. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about how did you get into like tapping into the subconscious? Like how did it actually go from like where your life was to like tapping into that subconscious?
Yeah, totally. So I had exposure towards Western medicine from a really young age, like most people do, because that's just the dominant form of medication and protocol that we find when we're in treatment. So I had chronic night terrors as a kid. I woke up screaming bloody murder every single night, 2 visions and shadows and invasions that I could not explain the next morning. And inevitably it would happen again that following night. So I was in therapy really young. I was hooked up to machines in hospitals. They were trying to test my brain and figure out what was wrong with me, quote unquote. And so I had exposure to doctors and experts and people that were trying to figure this out from a pretty topical standpoint in the way that Western does, right? Like they treat the symptom, not so much the root. And that's not a judgment or, anything that's negative. It's just kind of a fact of the system. And so I was manifesting a lot of disorder and dis-ease because of a lot of unprocessed traumas from a kid that I experienced. So I developed depression, anxiety, and eating disorder. I could not hold down a relationship or finish school. I was in and out of treatment for many, many times. I just call it the revolving door. I was in and out every few months and not able to sustain recovery, even though I had a team. I had a nutritionist, I had a psychiatrist, I had a therapist, I had a doctor, I had everybody that everybody told me I needed. And in this time period, I actually transitioned myself from being in a Midwestern university, coming out here to Colorado from a different standpoint. I went to a Buddhist inspired university. I was introduced to more traditional Chinese arts and medicines and Ayurveda and the 5-element theory and botanical medicine and a whole bunch of new language for me. And so I was still in treatment in the Western world, but I was studying more Eastern philosophy. Long story short, I toggled back and forth of all extremes of all different types of modalities. And between my personal, professional, and academic experience at the time, I toggled back to the subconscious world. And the subconscious world toggles science and spirituality. And I loved transpersonal psychology, which again is maybe more on the Western end of understanding, but it's all about what is beyond human experience. And in that, there is both science and spirit. And so I found this system 9 years ago, and it incorporates over 14 modalities from Eastern and Western medicine combined. And I'm thinking to myself, why does nobody know about this? Why is the Western world not utilizing this? Because what it does is that it accesses the root traumas, the root memories that are stored in the 95% of the brain, which is the invisible part. It's reactive. It's just the part that protects us and helps awaken us. And it does that through symptoms. It does that through thought patterns that we're not choosing. It does that through behaviors that we would never want to experience. And once we can actually harmonize and locate the roots of what's responsible for triggering present day stress, then we can let the body heal and do its natural thing. So long story short, just kind of did a whole bunch of things, trial and error. I was my own science experiment in a lot of ways. And I found this system, healed with this system, and now I get to offer it to other people.
Awesome. And I really love that. And I love how, so my background is addiction and mental health. And so one of the things that I found really challenging in the regular stream of things is that there was just, everything was always in silos. So like, there was like never, so like when you're going to treatment, like you're only dealing with this portion of your treatment, and then you're only dealing with this portion of your treatment. And so being able to expand to being able to have this approach of being able to have like this whole person approach where we can actually combine both. And so I never tell people that they don't necessarily need to be on medication. But a lot of times when we, at least my experience, and maybe yours is the same, is that people start off with their medication and then things get changed and adjusted. And to the point where like, I no longer take medication for my anxiety, depression. And so that is something that's really important to me. Not to say that I'm never, ever going to go back to being on medication if I need to. If I need to, I'm definitely going to do whatever it is that I need. But I have these resources and people like you that I can actually tap into to say, hey, this is where things are for me, and I need to shift or change or whatever it is that's going on. So tell me a little bit more about this modality.
Yeah, absolutely. So I love what you just shared too. This is so important because it's not just about like whether or not we're on medication or not. It's like, it's our relationship to the things that we're doing. And I find a lot of people have like trauma as they're relating to the medication in addition to the medication that they're just taking objectively. So we do a lot of transformation around that too. But yeah, so it's a system called the Lifeline Technique, and it's integrative in nature. So you do not have to understand all of these modalities in order for us to have a journey. Some of the modalities included are like shamanism, Ayurveda, traditional Chinese medicine, EMDR, applied kinesiology, chiropractic philosophy, total body modification, water consciousness theory, chakra alignment, on and on and on. So it's not that we do a little bit of all those things. It's that it's created this new hybrid where we can expedite cellular epigenetic healing. And that essentially just means above genes, right? Epi is above, genes, genetics. So instead of having this old paradigm where we're destined to suffer or we're destined to inherit intergenerational trauma, we are actually capable of transmuting or sustainably healing the cellular expression of what was passed down. But we have to know what we need to observe in order to influence it. And because it's hard to know what's going on subconsciously from a conscious mind, we can't always get there. We can't talk our way into what's going on under the surface, and we can't talk our way out of our feelings. And so we have to know how to let the subconscious guide us into what it's holding on to, which is how we use muscle reflex testing or applied kinesiology. You might have experienced that in a chiropractor's office or something where they'll test what your muscles are responding to or what your innate reflex is aligned with or not aligned with. And that helps us journey by observing what's going on in the body, the mind, the spirit, where are there limiting beliefs that you're perceiving on a sensory level, eyes, ears, nose, mouth, and sense of touch, and then upgrading those root memories so that the past parts of you that have been trapped and stuck without you maybe even knowing it can come to present day experience. And then there's more alignment, conscious and subconscious, for you to live a life of true intention. So it's true that we can like adjust our biochemistry naturally. We can adjust our physiology naturally. All of that is true. It doesn't mean that it's my place to tell somebody what they need. I'm always like, let's find your dream team. Let's do this work supplementarily or complementarily in conjunction with other modalities that you've got going on, or practitioners or doctors or whatever, so that you know your innate capabilities, which are to heal and be whole. But we got to work through some of those beliefs that maybe help people think that they're not actually here to do that.
And I love that. And I love that wholeness, because that's one of the things that we often hear is that, and like somebody actually made a reference, and I can't remember who it was, but they made a reference to the word healing means that we're actually broken. But it's about being able to bringing ourselves back into this wholeness that we have moved out of because of different beliefs or different things that have actually been put into place from either traumas or society or expectations. And that was the, I'm doing a gratitude challenge. And again, synchronicities, and the synchronicity for today was about being able to be that true authentic self, and being able to have being able to be that whole is being able to understand that all these expectations that are put on us doesn't necessarily mean that we have to actually have them or carry them, or that we can actually shift them and change them. And I love how you actually tap into being able to connect with other people's, like with their teams, like what else do they need to do? Because a lot of times we hear somebody say, oh yeah, well, this is the best modality. You need to like stop doing everything else that you're doing and join me and do this. And that's one of the things in my practice is that it gives me, I have like lots of different tools in my toolbox that, depending on who I'm working with, is what tools that I'm going to use and bring forward. And so being able to have somebody being able to tap into, okay, so we're going to work on in this area or whatever to be able to help support that. Well, you get to come in and help support this area and help them just really strengthen whatever it is that's going on. And I love that teamwork and that approach.
Me too. You know, I always say, like, I wish I had this information when I was going through treatment. Like, I am now who I needed then. And I think that there's so much of that in inner parent, inner child healing that happens when we're doing trauma work, where it's like, we are the parents now for ourselves that we didn't receive when we were younger. And there's such an innate bottomless passion that lives within me because of that, because I know what this work can do for so many people that are maybe more in the care of Western medicine or the treatment world. And I love collaborating. I'm like, let me be a part of your dream team. My way is not necessarily the way, but it's what worked for me in conjunction with a lot of other things. And so, you know, I want to just at least offer it. It's so intricate and so comprehensive, but even still, so is something like homeopathy or naturopathy. And I had a client come to me recently who's seeing a naturopath, and he was like, I just want to let you know, I don't know if this is like gonna go head to head with what I'm currently doing. I'm already on this regimen of supplementation. And I'm like, nuh-uh, like this is gonna be so different and so complementary at the same time. And I'm so glad you're seeing a naturopath, because now we get to do, you know, integrative work where we're going to upgrade the emotional processing centers that maybe the naturopath isn't getting to the root of, but is supplementing for. And then I'm not going to supplement you. So we're going to do different things in a really beautiful way. And I'm on board with everything that you said, as far as like, I want to talk with the therapists and I want to talk with the doctors and I want to let them know what we're doing. And I love collaborating with acupuncturists and chiropractors and people, nutritionists, like all types of people that are seeing somebody, because a lot of those fields aren't trained in the subconscious to get to the root of what is making that client walk into their office.
Absolutely. And it makes all that difference in terms of being able to have that interconnectedness, because we are a completely whole being. And that's something that's really important. And one of the things that I'm loving So just before you came on, I was actually listening to a podcast episode from someone else. And so one of the things that they were talking about is like this great awakening that has been going on and has been happening. And we're seeing a lot more of that interconnectedness and that and the woo-woo crazy stuff, right? So that's one of the things is that when I first started with doing this, I was like trying to keep it a little bit hush and quiet and like not telling people like the crazy things that I'm experimenting with or that I'm doing for myself and or for my clients. And so like, but now it's like this great awakening, this great big huge thing that's actually happening, that people are actually having conversations and knowing that there's like these things that are like there's, and going back to that subconscious, right? Like there's things that are going on that none of us know what it is that's happening. And so when we can tap into that, and I love the fact that you actually tap into that subconscious, because I know my ego brain, regardless of the fact that I know that there's a subconscious and I know that there's other things, my ego brain in a reactive moment is going to take over saying like, oh my gosh, like explosion, like life is like completely falling apart. And so being able to like, okay, just a minute, slow things down and figure out where it is that I'm going so that I can tap into some of the other things. And I know that for me, a lot of times, because I know that my ego brain takes over during the day and during my waking hours. And so I always set the intention that, okay, what do I need to know? So that when I wake up in the morning, I have some fresh idea, or I have something, especially if I'm stuck on something, because that subconscious part is where we have those conversations, right?
Absolutely. I love that you're kind of setting up your toolkit for like preparing for the trigger, because when we can expect that we're going to get triggered, we almost can shift our focus around it, where instead of being victim to it and going into the classic fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, which is natural, that's the instinct, it's involuntary, it's instantaneous when that happens. But if you're already preparing for the trigger and you know that it's part of life and it's not something that means that you're broken and not something that means that you're bad, but it's just helping awaken you to show you the parts of you that haven't been fully processed yet from past experience, whether it's this lifetime, past lifetimes, or generational trauma, right? When we can prepare for it. And I don't just mean like grounding and self-care, although that's really important, but it's like, what is in my toolkit? What are the things that I'm literally, physically, emotionally, mentally going to grab onto when that trigger happens, when the nervous system's dysregulated? Because the second that happens, the analytical ego mind is not going to be able to really be of much help. It's only 5%. And so knowing how to kind of play this game, knowing how to get to the root and upgrade that root the second that trigger happens. You know, I always say to people, triggers are part of the human experience, but when you do a lot of this subconscious healing route, you're upgrading the cellular memory of those emotional charges. And so you can decrease the frequency of triggers, and you can also decrease the severity. So I'm curious how that lands for you, just based on your experiences as well.
I love that. And one of the things that I've never heard in terms of percentage is that 5% of the way that so like when we actually can tap into that, like, I love that. I love that idea that, and it's not an idea, obviously it works. But so there's my ego brain going into like using words, right? So, but it's like that, that portion of being able to like have that connection of tapping into these things so that the triggers are not happening so often, and that we can actually take the next step, because we still do need to go through those processes. We still do need to have the information that we need in order to be able to have had that experience. And again, going back to the podcast that I was just listening to, again, synchronicity, right? And one of the things that they actually talked about was that we've got these things that have happened to us that just bring us into, because we've chosen, our soul has chosen to go through these experiences. And I know that a lot of people are like, I didn't want to have to go through all this trauma. And I hear that a lot. And it's like, no, but our souls had a plan. Our souls had a reason. And so for you experiencing the things that you did without having the tools allows you to be able to now have the tools, so that when somebody else is experiencing it, they can actually get the help sooner and easier than it did for you, right? So like, that's one of the things that I love, is that we get put through these experiences to allow ourselves to be able to better help and better serve others in terms of the circumstances and situations. Like even using, so we've got the new grandbaby, and so like just even using the experiences that I had as a mom for my two boys allows me to be able to give some feedback and some like, well, maybe this might be something that you might want to look at for what's going on with the baby. And then her mom has the same, like, okay, well, like, these are some of the things. And the same as, again, the circumstances. So we both all had our own experiences, but like the baby had these little pimple things on his face. And so her mom and I both had the same response of, oh, look at that, he's got a heat rash. And she's like, no, those are milk pimples, right? So like, but she's been able to learn that differently. And her mom and I are both like, oh, we've always called those heat rashes, right? But it doesn't mean that it was right or it was wrong. It was just that now there's something different or something else to look at from that perspective, right?
Totally. And it's so beautiful having like a newborn in the family, because there's such an evident generational healing that's going on, and maybe more evidence to show where there's still generational trauma. And even in you having that perception and somebody else having a different perception, those are broadcasting signals that are showing you something in your life versus something in somebody else's life that they have perceived for a particular reason. So what's so wild, and like, yeah, I'm not a math person, numbers are hard, but this is the easiest statistic just to carry through with you. Yeah, the conscious choosing brain, the analytical part that's controlling this conversation right now, is only 5% of the brain. And it's so mind bending because it's all that we see. So it's all that we perceive. So it's all that we believe. And when we believe something, it doesn't make it true. It's just based on our experiences. And at the same time, the subconscious is like below the iceberg. It's everything underneath. It's 95%. It's all of our life experiences that we probably don't remember, but the subconscious does. The subconscious, like a camera, takes screenshots every single moment of our lives where we feel unsafe or we don't have a need that's being met. And all of a sudden it starts broadcasting those same looped patterns in present day. So this grandbaby, it's like so beautiful because as you do your healing, you get to shift the environment around you. And then generationally, these healings start sustaining themselves. And at the same time, like I said, especially with a symptom, there might be people around this grandbaby who are creating a frequency subconsciously without even knowing it of like, ooh, what's going on with the symptom? Who has experienced it before? Why is it there? And then we start digging up all of these questions, right? And so it's brilliant to see how the generational impact shows up too. And it happened with a client of mine recently. It was so wild. She has a history of attracting narcissistic, covert narcissists in her life, just really struggling with dating, really struggling, feeling safe in relationship. And then all of a sudden her niece comes over recently for Easter, the holiday. And the niece has a father who's covertly narcissistic. And the coverts, you know, it's very tricky. It's very subtle. It's very manipulative, but it's not as obvious as maybe like an overt situation. And so she was very aware that her niece needed a lot, that the manifested behavior in the niece as a result of having this covert narcissistic father is being very needy, kind of clinging and hanging on, and like needs a lot of hugs, needs a lot of attention. And because my client has triggers with the same covert narcissistic history in dating, the fact that her niece needed her so hands-on, she was so avoidant. She was like, no, I can't even give because it's triggering all of her own stuff of her relationship. So where there's one trigger, it kind of permeates the field of everything that we've personally experienced. And once we harmonize those memories from those past associated traumas, then all of a sudden, we're able to open up and be more compassionate and be more giving and isolate and separate, like that's her stuff and this is my stuff. And those are two different experiences, but subconsciously it's almost like it's all being processed at the same time.
And I love that. Being able to have creating that awareness. So when we start tapping in and connecting, is that we actually get these windows of opportunity that say, hey, and sometimes we miss those windows, but then they come back again later. So like, and then we get these light bulb moments of like, oh, that's what was happening when like that light bulb went on and I was trying puzzled and couldn't figure out what was going on, and so on and so forth. Right. So like being able to recognize that. So like, that is like kudos to your client for being able to recognize that like, this is what was going on. And I was really struggling with that and not being able to like meet somebody else's needs because my own needs were being triggered and not able to do that. So I love that awareness. Like what a beautiful experience and a beautiful representation of like what exactly it is that you're talking about in terms of like people being stuck in those moments and being able to shift out of that whole subconscious. So tell me a little bit more about like, how do you work with your clients? So obviously you work collaboratively with whoever or whatever that they already have in terms of practices, but like, so how do you work with your clients?
Yeah, so I see people one-on-one, people who struggle with depression, anxiety, trauma, and various types of addictions. So that could be, addiction to low self-esteem and thought patterns. It could be addiction to an actual substance. It could be addiction to relationship. It could just be how we relate to ourselves, to the world, to our families. So that's very broad. But I do a 16-step process with them every single session. So in the 16-step process, we're essentially going to get really grounded. We're going to observe, like, what are the physical symptoms your body's expressing? How would you rate them? What are the emotional experiences you're expressing? And how would you rate them? We're going to set an intention in a really intricate way, and then actually start to program that intention in the mind, body, spirit field, because we're going to harmonize the reactions that are currently existing in the mind, body, spirit that are preventing the client from being able to live their optimal intention, whatever it is that their heart desires for them. So we're going to literally wire the mind to follow the heart instead of the other way around, because the heart is electrically thousands of times more powerful than the brain, but we give the mind so much power in society to dominate our experiences. And so we're going to program by using aspects of neuro-linguistic programming. We're going to tap into the conscious body so that we can align it with the subconscious reactions that are going on. And then we're going to, again, get to that memory, get to that root belief of whatever it is that's responsible for triggering present day stress, present day emotions. And then we're going to upgrade it. So the awareness, as you just were talking about, Rollie, is so beautiful. But then it's but what do we do about it? Because I see brilliant clients. I see people who are super self-aware. They know exactly what's going on. And that's not really enough, right? Because if it was enough, they'd be thriving already. That's why I love therapy. I really do. I've been in therapy forever, but it's also let's go deeper than just what we're talking about, than just what we're aware of. And so once we locate the memory, we're going to upgrade the memory to present day experience. And we're going to find out what are the channels in the body? What are the meridians that it's expressing? How is the mind, body, spirit holding on? We're going to do a whole bunch of patterning and repatterning to cellularly shift the expression. And once we do that, we bring everything back together. We observe how they're presently feeling, and then we'll take customized action steps based on what came up in session, what their next best things are. So like I said, regardless of other practices they might be doing, yoga, meditation, Reiki, energy healing, that's all great. This is going to hit a little bit different. And so people end up after session being I just feel more put together. I feel more whole. I feel more integrated. I feel exhausted, right? It's like gymnastics for the mind, because we're really going in to parts unseen. And so we just want to make sure that we can upgrade those cellular expressions together. And every session looks different, and one builds upon the other. So we get to go to really cool places. Sometimes we even journey into past lives, depending on the client. And that's really fun too.
That's really cool. And so when somebody's wanting to work with you, how do they, we've got your contact information, wherever it is that people are listening to this on, but so how do they start with you? So is it just booking one session, or is it okay, well, here's a 10-week program, or how do you do that?
Yeah, great question. So it is case by case. However, I always say to people, if you have an awareness of what it is that you're struggling with, say you have acute, pain in your back that just won't go away, or autoimmune, or you have Lyme disease, or you just struggle with depression, anxiety, whatever it is, I always say, let's go at it once a week for 5 weeks. Then we're going to reassess. After that point, because significant changes will be made after each session and our integration time in between session. After that point, we'll reassess. And so some people stay on because this is honestly the greatest gift you could give yourself. And we're essentially doing 20 years of therapy each session, because it's that expedited. Some people start weaning off right away. So it might go to twice a month, and it might go to monthly, just depending on what the client's got going on and how many shifts they've really been able to make. But I always revert the empowerment back to the client. I'm hey, you're going to start feeling these shifts. You're going to start understanding your pace of processing. And so you're going to know when your vibration starts sustaining itself, and when you're not getting triggered as much anymore, and when you're able to just be in that good feeling place. And then from there, I'm here anytime you need me. So if you want to come back for a tune-up once a month, if you want to come back every 3 months, whatever feels good for you. After we do our 90-minute intake session, people know what we're in for. And so we chat at the end a little bit about what value they see in this process and how it can benefit them going forward.
I love that. And I love how it is completely unique to each person as to what it is that they have going on, because some people are at different stages in terms of their awareness and where it is that's going on. And I love how like you said, is like going to the original, like, so like having that Lyme disease, or having that physical ailment of whatever it is that is going on, because that physical ailment, so like right now, whatever it is that's going on with my sinuses and my cold, I thought that I was already gone, and this morning I woke up to nasal congestion and like needing to drink lots, right, to try and keep my my vocal cords. And so like obviously there's something going on that that I need to explore further, and that I need to tap into. And so being able to look at it from, okay, so from this systemic whatever it is that's going on, and then being able to kind of tap in from there, because that is always like, so what's at that root cause? And I love how you tap into that subconscious piece. So now tell me a little bit more about, like, so you have something that you wanted to be able to share with people. So so tell me more about that.
Yeah, so I have a free gift. It's just a comprehensive affirmation and resource kit for sustained health and wellness. So no matter where you are in your healing journey, whether you need kind of like a big kick just to get things rolling, or you have a lot that you're doing, but you feel like you need something more to address the physical, or something to address like chronic pain, or something to help you detox a little bit, I have created a comprehensive kit that is a really choose your own adventure type of playground here. So you can bite off as much as you want to chew. You can go for all of the practices in there. You can just do a little bit at a time. The name of the game is commitment here. So if you make one commitment to one thing in this kit, and you commit to it for 7 days or 3 weeks or 1 month or whatever feels good to you, the name of the game is self-commitment. So check in with yourself. See what you're willing to commit to. Maybe it's just drinking an extra glass of water a day. Maybe it's telling yourself you love yourself every time you go to the bathroom. Like, there's things here that are very digestible, and one commitment will change your life. So play with it. I have resources. I have mantras. I have exercises. I have things that I usually like to recommend to clients. So I just figured I'd compile it all in one place and give it to you for free, because the most important thing is that the information is out there and you get to pick and choose what feels best.
And I love how you actually said, like, being able to break it down into one thing. So being able to self-commit to one thing, because a lot of times we have these expectations, again, going with the theme from our gratitude challenge, is like the whole expectations of what everybody else. It's like, oh, okay, well, I was listening to this podcast today, and Paige was talking about this, and she had like this list of things. So like I have to do all these things because she said so. It's like, but like, finding one thing, right? So picking something that works for you, and being able to tap into that resource, or that thing that will allow you to be able to do that. And that's the whole point of the gratitude challenge this month, is being able to like just tapping into like, how can we and the prompts are different every day, because there's different tools that are going to be helpful for one person that isn't necessarily for the other. And so like, here's the, like, we were like, oh, I don't really know where this all tied into, or why we went from March 8th to, and it's because of like how exactly it all fit with the gratitude. And I did my my daily prompt live this morning, and had not had a conversation with you. So I had absolutely no idea how all of this was actually going to be interconnected. And so, but it's like, I've learned to like not stay in the ego of like, okay, well, I don't know how come today is the day why we're connecting today. But it's like I had no idea. So like my gratitude challenge plan had been put in place, like the daily prompts had actually been put in place sometime in March. And so they're just all coming together in April. And I love how they just all interconnect and intertwine. And like I said, having that conversation this morning, or not listening to that conversation this morning of the podcast interview, where like they were talking about like these awakening and all these things, and being able to be like more aware, and like our soul's journey. And it's like, wow, all this ties right into everything in terms of like why we needed to listen to it today, at this point, at this time. So wherever it is that you're listening to it. And so for those of you who can actually see the screen, because I know that some of you guys are actually listening to the podcast. And so we have the link actually scrolling around on the bottom of the screen for anybody who's visually able to see it. Those of you who are on Facebook and YouTube, there is a direct link for you to be able to actually go and click on that link. And for those of you who are actually not able to see it, or are only seeing the it's scrolling across the front, is that I wanted to be able to point out what it is so that you can actually have access to it. So it's https inner realms, inner realm, no S, wellness.life/free-gift/. So that is how you can gain access to this amazing resource that Paige has put together, that she has shared with her clients over the years. And so is there anything else that you wanted to share before we headed out, Paige? Is there anything that you're like, hey, I really want to be able to talk about this?
You know, my parting words would just be trust the process, because it's brilliant. And even if we don't consciously understand something that we're experiencing, subconsciously, there's always reason. And we can find out what that reason is whenever you're ready. So, you know, the fact that it's spring, the fact that everything is coming to fruition, everything's blooming, there might be some unearthing going on, but it's a beautiful time to really water the roots and water the seeds that you're planting. And so it's no coincidence whatsoever that we're connecting today. You and I are both different people today than we were even a month ago. And it's beautiful to see the results of that. So do your best to be gentle, trust the process, know there are always people here for you, myself and Rollie included, and just continue to stay the course, knowing you're always on the path.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. And I love that. And yes, we are finally in spring here in Northern Ontario. We've had so many storms that were happening, but everything's melting super fast. And so for anybody who understands like Celsius degrees, because I know that you're from the US, so, and I didn't convert it into Fahrenheit, but we're like at 17 degrees Celsius here in like Northern Ontario, where we've had like snowstorms. And so we are definitely in spring today. So super excited about that. I went outside today, and like my lawn, I actually have this great big huge gap of grass. And I'm like, yesterday it wasn't there. So like, I'm super excited about how much that it's melting. And so spring, finally. Yay. So thanks everyone. And I will be back tomorrow with another Chatting with Wisdom for our regular time. So thanks again, Paige, for rescheduling for today and connecting with this divine timing.
Thank you too. Appreciate it.
Thanks everybody. And we will talk soon.